farming policy released by the Honorable Chief Minister just 2-3 days back. The title of it is Doubling of Farmers' Income. This is a promise made by Modi during his previous term, not fulfilled by 2022. But now in 2020, our Chief Minister is promising that the income of the farmers are going to be doubled within 2 years, that is by 2022. Now, what is the background on this? The background first is why someone will say why now, when especially when agitations are happening all across the country. The first thing is I want people, and this is hilariously insulting, that this document, the preparation of this document started 5 years ago in 2015. That the ICAR and the government of Goa started preparing this document of doubling farmers' income by 2022 in 2015, and it took 5 years for I'm pretty sure all the people involved in preparation of the document have doubled their income, but the farmers have not doubled their income. But having said that, see, we have become so desensitized to this whole thing. And if you can share my screen, I will just do a run through so that people understand what is this farmers policy in the shortest possible. And also the fact that the RSS has put in their agenda into it, their beef ban agenda, how slyly they have have put it in this. But before this, I want people to really understand why farmers are protesting in a very simple form. I'll do it. Right now, what is happening, the farmers, it can be a small farmer with an individual farm, a farmer with a huge farmland, a very small farmer that is having like just a couple of, acres or even half an acre of land. So, or you have a farmer who cultivates and sells it on the street directly to the customer. So we have these different kind of farmers, and they in turn sell it either to some corporate who like in Goa we have Maxons and other supermarkets. They can sell it in a APMC, in a mandi as we call it, wherein there are agents, there are middlemen who do the trading of that. So they in turn buy from many farmers, and then they find buyers in turn. They either store it or they supply it to retailers or wholesalers or hotels or industries. So it's the job of the wholesaler to find the ultimate customer, but they are the middlemen between the farmers and the retailers. So now, we have the what I shown you in brown. Then we have the retails, which are like big supermarkets. They are small shops, and there are factories like Lay's and all these other companies that process the food.
Avinash, your screen is not being shared. Just hold on. Just share your screen, please.
Okay. It's sorry. I thought. Okay. Is it being shared? Can you see it?
It has not. Yes.
No. One second. Can you see the screen now? No. Wait a second. Okay. Now I think it's visible, right? Yeah. So as I was saying, we have different kind of farmers. They have smaller people with individual farmlands. There are farmers with huge acres of land or hectares of land. There are farmers with very small, 200 square meters, 500 square meters of land. And there are farmers also who directly sell to the, to the neighbors or to who sit on the side of the road and they sell their produce. You have your middlemen, and then you have your the retailers, and who are like the big supermarkets. I've shown it as a big shop, the medium ones, and factories like Lay's, etc. And you have customers who are either single families, they are maybe groups like societies or something, or they might be hoteliers who buy it. So this is the normal cycle of it. And APMC, I have shown in brown, where there are agents and there are traders who sit. Now, who are agents? Agents are like brokers who will meet the farmer, assess the item, and find the right buyer for it. The traders also do the same thing, but they might store it themselves. An agent will not store it. He is just getting two people together. That they're called commission agents, and the traders are the ones who might pay the farmer, and they hold it for a while, and they in turn supply it to a wholesaler or a big retail shop or a factory. So this is so then now what this new bill wants to do, it wants to empower the man in red, that is a big corporate. So by removing the mandi, what happens slowly, the mandis will disappear because the government will stop funding them. In Goa, we have mandis. The average income of the mandi through all these small fees they collect from traders around 4 crores. If the farmers don't go to the mandis, if a corporate comes and says, I will give you double the rate for a vegetable, why are you going to the mandis? For the first year or 2 years, 3 years, he might do that. So there, he will take over the farmer's produce. The mandis will eventually shut down, and he will have control over that, and he will store and keep it. Then what happens as he grows, like what Reliance has done, they have taken over Future Group. Reliance Retail. Future Group is also, they have taken over. If I'm not mistaken, it's Reliance and not Adani, but they will take over big retails. They will exert control over small. They will control the prices of these vegetable or food produce in smaller shops, and obviously they will also be in charge of processing it. So they will grow in their influence like that. Eventually, the farmers, instead of going to this thing, the corporate will become so powerful that he will dictate the price of that. Once the mandi goes, there's nobody to dictate the price. Like what has happened with our Vodafone and Reliance and Jio and all. Jio came, offered the best prices for our customers. What happened? Other companies got bankrupt, and now they are forced to shut down. So same thing will happen there. Now he becomes more powerful. He gets to dictate the price of the produce or what is to be bought from the farmer. So instead of it being a fair market, a mandi is a fair market where if I want, I can go with my rice. I say I want 100 rupees for a sack. If I don't get 100 rupees, I can come back because I know tomorrow there'll be somebody. But if there's no mandi, there'll be only one Reliance who will decide that even tomorrow if you come, it'll still be 70 rupees. Day after tomorrow you come, it'll still be 70 rupees. So sell it to me today itself. Otherwise it'll rot. So that's what is happening. Even the first victims, among the farmers will be the small farmers. They will die slowly. Reliance and these big companies will take over all the farms. They're going to, and that why they will take over, because farmers, the contract farming deal is such that if the farmer cannot supply this quality of vegetable, a quality word is arbitrary. In a mandi, quality is, there are officials to decide what is the quality. But when the mandi is not there, it will be the corporate who will decide this is what is the quality, and he can always reject the goods of the farmers, saying that it is not as per quality. And the loss of it, for example, if I'm a supermarket, you're a farmer, I will do a contract farming with you. You have to supply 100 cabbages to me every day. One day I will say, I don't like the cabbages, they're too small, reject it. But I still, as per the contract, I can buy the cabbage from the market, and if there's a price difference, you have to pay for that. You as a farmer has to pay for my loss of price difference. So eventually you are taking the burden of that. That is what contract farming is happening right now in Bangalore and other places. So everywhere around the world. Second thing is, the corporate will decide the seeds and the which will go into that. So we had already had a case where Lay's had given seeds of potatoes for their proprietary potatoes to certain farmers who ended up growing it in the next season and selling it in the market. Lay's sued that. Now we are in a situation where agriculture being one of the biggest industries, most employed, that the corporate will decide what a farmer can or cannot grow, and a corporate will have the monopoly over it. There are, especially with GM crops and with all this. And if you say as a farmer that you will not involve, no, it doesn't work like that. Because if I grow genetically modified crops and your farm is next, there'll be cross-pollination. Your grain will eventually have the same genetic material as mine, And if my grains are such that I cannot regrow, because now the GM crops are like that, I have to buy it from the corporates. If I keep the seeds for the next harvest, those seeds don't grow. And if those flowers of my this thing they cross pollinate with yours, your crop also, your seeds also will not grow. Although you had never cultivated GM crops, but yours might be normal seeds. But because they cross pollinated with the pollen from my fields, your seeds will be infertile. It will not grow.
Oh my God.
So eventually, all this will have a cascading effect. If and eventually, the entire farm and the full cycle of this farmland will be taken over by the corporates. That is how the system is designed. Now, they will definitely become very powerful. So the
Can we
CM
just
probably,
add Avinash over here?
yeah.
Just before you continue, I would like to add, the diagram that you've just shown.
Yeah.
In business terms, that's something known as, the reverse integration along the supply chain, forward
Absolutely, yeah, correct.
and backward integration. And this is a very, very smart technique. And coming from a corporate background, I can see the strategy at work. What they're doing. And to add to that, the GM, the genetically modified aspect that you just spoke about, that is so highly insidious. I mean, my mind, like, as I was hearing you, my mind was blown. Like, no wonder the farmers are protesting with such emphasis, is because
Yeah.
they might be simple people, but they've understood that finally they are going to lose their lands. That's the
Absolutely.
end
They
goal.
might not be able to articulate it. They might not be able to articulate like the way, because people have studied it, but they know something is definitely wrong and it is unacceptable.
Yes.
Now, if the farmer, how this step takes place, how the corporate takes over the farmland, eventually they can keep rejecting. I as a corporate can keep rejecting your produce, and the loss when you run out of money, what are you going to have? It has to be recovered from your land as per the contract. The deputy collector can recover it from the land tax, or if you're not paying land tax, you can auction your land off, like how a bank repossesses your flat if you don't pay the installment, and he has to pay the corporate and this. Now the corporate the issue of contract farming in Goa, there's a history of contract farming which our CM and many people have forgotten conveniently. And it started with our late Honorable Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar somewhere in 2014. He brought in an amendment to of contract farming. In what he had brought in the Agriculture Tenancy Act. That was a time when he decided to move all the cases from the tenancy cases, where agricultural tenants can purchase land from their landlords. Those cases were moved to the civil court, and there was a huge objection. In that amendment, there was a contract clause statement. So then Parrikar had to withdraw it because of the opposition from people. Now it has come back. And now in this policy, what he's announced, or the CM has announced, this farming policy, contract farming is there again in that. In the export policy, there is contract farming. Your own predecessor had tried this. It was rejected. He had to withdraw it. And now you are saying contract farming will be good. So this is the same as his double tracking U-turn. This is another case where his own predecessor had said, okay, fine, we'll withdraw it, because he also realized it was a bad idea. Now, now it becomes such that when there are so many U-turns, you begin to doubt. I think I read that contract farming was removed from the act, but the environment is such, like, the lies are so many that we won't begin to doubt our own knowledge. But anyways, yeah, it was withdrawn, and now it has come back from the center. Does the center have the right to decide over a contract of agricultural land? No. The constitution is very clear. Agricultural land is mentioned only 4 times in the constitution. In all times, it is mentioned as exception. Means the central government can bring laws related to land with exception of agricultural land. So central government is constitution very clear, has no authority of this. This is completely unconstitutional. But we are no more a federal system, which is why our own chief minister is promoting an unconstitutional act of the central government with the promise is going to double the farming income. Now, could you just go to this thing, presentation? Yeah. So, as I was saying, the farming income the constitution this thing was done in 2017 when the committee was formed. The actual process started earlier, but the committee was formed. It took 3 years for the committee to come up with it. The broad objective is product improvement of crops, generic term, crop diversification. This is already taking place. Strategy of development of labor saving technologies. Now this is mechanized farming. Why are we moving towards mechanized farming? I'll just read out to you strategies for development of labor saving technologies through mechanization. Mechanization is good for big farms. America adopted mechanization in a huge way, and the population of farming in US decreased from 30-40% to 2 or 3%. But those 2-3% of farmers are going in loss today. Because number one, who makes money with mechanized farming? The corporates who are selling you this mechanized farming. Whereas the labor class is losing out. They have to go to the cities, live in slums, and be exploited for a very low wage. So, although mechanization is good, the way it is being implemented, it is very wrong. If at all we have to implement mechanized farming, it has to be through farming societies which are owned, operated by the farmers collective. That is not happening here. We have either corporates or certain rich people doing it. And of course, policy interventions from land reforms, community farming, contract farming, optimization of farm products. So I will just talk about land reforms. In this, the largest owner of agricultural land today is the Komdad. And most of the Komdad land is not cultivated because of fake tenants' names. That is, tenants who are either names have been entered wrongly. They were never tenants. I won't go into detail of why it has happened. Or this is the first thing that they entered wrongly, or the tenants who were there are not cultivating. So the land had to be actually returned back to the Komdad. That is not happening. This land reform is not mentioned specifically in this document. And in this document, the word Komdad doesn't appear at all. So you have the largest, I won't say it's a landlord because Komdad is the body of the village. The largest holder of land, the problems that they face, you're not addressed it in this policy. The second thing is community farming, you are not promoting it. You just wanted to release this document to emphasize on contract farming. That is the first thing. Then some of the policy I will just skip that. But here also policy investment requirement. First thing is contract and or community farming. The community farming is just a distraction. So so this now this is the central government policy, central government's agenda of promoting corporates into farming and into taking over agricultural land. This is why people are opposing, and this is why Goa also should oppose. But there's another thing, very sinister thing in this. There is a section on meat, because after all, meat is also an agricultural produce. They have mentioned goat, they have mentioned pig, they have mentioned poultry, but they have not mentioned beef. We are one of the largest beef consuming states. And when I say beef, I don't mean meat of cows, because that is banned. I mean meat of bulls, meat of buffaloes. There is no mention of this meat in the whole document. So that means they are assuming Goa does not want meat. And when we have the neighboring state who is our supplier of meat, they are claiming they want to ban slaughter. We should increase our production. We should increase our production of beef, especially for export, because the same BJP party leaders are huge exporters of beef, and we are consumers of it. Now, we have brands like Costa, like Salils, like Rego, who are making this, and there is no mention of that in this entire document. That means this government, Pramod Sawant, I'm making a direct accusation against him. that he is against the minority communities, this document, because it has ignored beef, it has ignored Goa meat complex, it has ignored setting up small slaughterhouses. We have beef being illegally slaughtered, cows being illegally slaughtered, and instead the only way to do it was to regulate it. And they are saying, what is the solution if you're not going to the when you want to make milk, when you want to have cows to produce milk, they have to be impregnated and they deliver males. What do you do with those males? How much space land? We don't have a Gaushala working properly in Goa to cater to all these male bulls and all. So at least once they grow old, they can be sold off for this industry, so the farmer is supported. I'm not going into the politics of veganism and all that stuff, because I know there'll be a lot of vegans to talk about it. But just in terms from the farmer's perspective, he has an additional source of instant, like an income, which he can buy the next cow or the next animal with. And that has been not discussed at all. It's absolutely absurd. And this, I hope people of Goa wake up, because this is very sinister on the part of this government not to talk about beef in this document.
Because this is Avinash, it's a very convenient omission from the document when you're talking about the agri policy of the
It's
state.
an intentional omission. It's an intentional omission. It is a this thing to cater to certain right-wing groups who are whose way of attracting votes is by promoting ban on slaughter of cattle. So that
makes me wonder, Avinash, sorry to cut you off, but that makes me wonder, and it just popped into my mind right now. One side is giving benefit to the oligarchs and their crony capitalist friends. That's one major side of it. The second aspect is to enable, hoarders. Again, these oligarchs who are going to hoard it. But now, is this very action by Goa government? Is it not also kind of exposing their hidden agenda also, that behind this whole hustle bustle and shuffle of agricultural bills coming in, the ordinances, and now the bills, and then the protest and everything, are they trying to insidiously effectively pass a no beef policy in the entire country? Because now that we've seen it here in Goa in just one document, we need to actually go into detail into other states as well, especially where the BJP is in power, and understand what they've done in terms of the meat complex that you mentioned.
Absolutely. The whole idea here is that they want to promote certain people who are into beef export. This is not about religion. Anybody who says that is fooling themselves. Check who are the biggest exporters of beef from India. And why are they getting beef at a low rate? Is because there's a beef ban there's a beef ban across the country. So that is how the farmer has no choice but to sell their beef to these few exporters, who in turn keep their religion at home and profit from this trade. So yes, Absolutely. If you're talking about climate change, I would prefer that the beef be completely stopped, as in terms of an environmental point of view. But if this is going to, but at least that should be specified, that to meet our climate change objective, the UN Sustainable Goal objective, we want to phase out beef in that. But then of course you will have to also phase out milk, because still cows will still exist. But at least specify the reason. Don't just, this is the way they're doing. They want to divide society. They know people are going to eventually question this, and then they will rally their base and say, look, see, these minority communities, they want to kill our cows, and that is why they're doing it. We are not talking about cows. We are talking about buffaloes. We are talking about bulls. So if we want to stop it, they should have had the guts to put it in the document. If they really were talking about religious sentiment, they should have put it in the document that no, we do not want beef slaughter in Goa. They don't have the guts, but they are equally cowards of not including that in this document. So that is how I see it. To go a little ahead in that, they are talking about slaughterhouses and meat processing unit for small animals. strengthening of veterinary services. Again, your veterinary services, you are not included for with related to meat. I mean, beef. Sorry, in this thing. But then we move ahead. What are the problems faced by the Goan farmers? Lack of cold storage is one of the problems faced, and government has still not done anything in this regard. High labor cost. That's all. They have listed all these problems, but they have not put solutions for this. The high labor cost, there's an issue of high labor cost. Every state faces that. Kerala faces that. How they tackle it? They have good policies wherein they provide for these are laborers who don't own land. They work in other people's land, other farmers' land. They provide with them insurance, with them schemes. So they have different ways of tackling it. We don't have it. I'm just to give you our document, not even 100 pages. Kerala has such an extensive document. I urge the government of Goa to read their document. Here we have only one policy which took 5 years to prepare. There they have like dozens of policies, and each, like say, policy related to land. They have 8 policies only related to land. They have policies related to climate and environmental related policies. That is like, they have, for example, one of the policy is meteorological observations should be increased. Network of meteorological observations. They have policies on optimizing the ecological load on natural systems. These are very detailed one. Research and development of initiatives to increase, for climate change, adaptation, and sustainability. So I'll just scroll through them. Soil related policies, water related policies, policies related to watershed development, policies related to farmers' distress. Then there are policies related to markets and marketing, policies on international trade related issues. So how they are going to deal with export of their produce. We just have one document, and if we don't address individual issues by so many, see the hard work. We need to appreciate why Kerala is the number one state. We can copy paste their policy and implement it here because our geography is almost the same, but we won't do that.
Yes.
So this policy, first of all, is a sham. It's an exposure of their, I don't want to use the word Hindutva because it kind of takes away. It is a right-wing agenda, which they're not about religion, but they just want to divide society. It is about promoting corporates through this contract farming. I hope people have understood. Again, just to summarize, there is no mention of Komdad in this policy. Can you hear me? Yeah. There is no mention of Komdad. There is no mention of tenancy rights. There should have been at least one statement that tenancy rights will be given on a fast track basis. People are spending years, 8 years, 10 years in the courts, a deputy collector, to get their name to as a tenant, in spite of the ancestors doing it. Ancestors cultivating on that particular land, they now have the guts to face their landlords. They were like slaves at that time. They used to get scared of the landlord. But today they have the guts and the money to fight a case. It takes 8 years, 10 years to complete a process. There was no mention of this land reform, tenant land reforms in this document. So when the land is not theirs, how can the government promise doubling of their income?
Yeah,
and most importantly,
platitude.
and more importantly, if a deputy collector or a mamladar cannot wrap up a tenancy case within a year, do we really expect them to wrap up the contract irregularity cases? Now, if a farmer is not paid by the corporate, his only recourse as per the act is to go to the deputy collector or the mamladar, deputy collector. The deputy collector today itself cannot clear his cases within a year. And when hundreds of such cases come up, will the farmer get justice on time, or will he have to commit suicide right outside this thing? Which will happen? And then the land will go to the
latter. It's going to be the latter. And that's why the strong opposition by farmer community. And because I don't blame them. It's a really scary scenario.
Absolutely. Now, we live in a state where I can just walk for 5 minutes and I'll reach the collector's office. But in states like Karnataka and those big states, they have to walk for miles. They have to travel miles to, hours to reach the deputy collector's office. Even in Kankan and Sangay, it's the same story.
Yes.
These people who are planning these policies are not thinking from the perspective of the farmer. And more importantly, this, like, the third thing is, it does not address the labor shortage issue, which is again a very important aspect of this. So yeah, this was an article related to, I won't go into this. I'll just show you there are 9 mandis in Goa today. The main one is in where in Alem in Fatorda, where I live. I never knew this. Just when I did this research near our old RT office, we have a big mandi there, which deals with several produce from coconut. These are all the commodities that can be traded there. Some of the commodities now have been removed from this from being traded in the from Essentials Commodities Act. But we have everything from mangoes, potatoes, papayas, oranges, flowers, barley, coconut oil, milk, ghee, and I confirm farmers are still trading in the mandis. So they might not even be aware, our Goan farmers not even be aware of the impact of this act on them. And I hope they do realize, because if the mandi is gone, they will not be able to negotiate their price fairly. They will not get a fair price for their produce. So what is the job of the mandi? The job of the mandi is basically to regulate trade prices. The correct weightment at the yard is provided free of cost by the marketing board. So weighing of the produce, they have to regulate that. Prompt payment of value immediately after weightment of the producer is ensured. So the mandi is responsible for make sure the farmer is paid there and then. The transaction is cleared on site, not like contract farming, where it will take days, and if at all, malpractices with regards to weights and prices offered by traders are checked. Free competition among traders is encouraged, not like corporates where it will be a monopoly. To derive maximum benefits, sale by tender system is provided. These are all the facilities that have been given by the marketing board, and they charge fees, and their annual revenue is 4 crores, which they have to spend on this. But what the government said, these farmers will be 4 crores, they will save 4 crores, the farmers, by not having to go to these mandis. These are like 5-10 rupees, by the way, as fees charged. It just because of the amount of trade reaches that 4 crores. But the farmers gets instant justice, instant security, instant fairness over there, equality over there. One farmer is not preferred over the other farmer, at least in theory. If it's not happening, it's probably an issue that can be dealt with. You don't have to throw away the baby with the bathtub if the baby is crying. So you can fix it. So this is why we need mandis, and we need them to improve rather than throw it. These are some of the facilities that are given at the mandi. You have godowns, compound wall, canteen facility, the watchman is there, then roads, wells. So there are schemes at this mandis. The producer seller is entitled to 1,000 per rupees 100 per 1,000 nuts. So if like for cover their transportation cost and all, these are schemes that are there. The government should have increased this. There are license fees are charged, as I was saying. Commission agent, the agent who just brings 2 people together, they have to pay 250 rupees per year. Nominal charges. I don't know whether these have increased right now, but this is from the website. So like this, your class A trader pays, class B trader pays, and so on. So the policy, in my view, is flawed. They will not be able to increase their income in 2 years. Please stop lying. At least you can say we will give you a fair income, not doubling of income. You must see what their income is, first of all. That was not mentioned. Whether it is 5,000 per year, 10,000 per year, 50,000 per year. Simply saying this. So one of the examples today is of how this system is flawed can be seen at a fish market, wholesale fish market in HPDA. You have one trader who's become now a mafia, who controls fish prices so blatantly. And this is something that we had exposed when I was working for Herald a couple of years back. And how the system works is, if the fishermen bring in mackerels, they take about 12 hours to reach. In that 12 hours, when the mafia knows that mackerels are coming in, they remove the mackerels from their storage, which they had imported at a very cheap price from other states, and they flood the market. So by the time our Goan trawlers come in, it's like, for example, the market price today of mackerels is 100 rupees. So if these guys are coming in with their mackerels, they'll reach by 6 o'clock in the morning. By 4 o'clock in the morning, the traders who are now big mafias, they will remove mackerels from their cold storage that they bought for 80 rupees, and they'll flood it, and they'll say 90 rupees, or they'll say even 80 rupees also. They don't mind. It might be less than that. By the time our Goan fellows come, the price already dropped to 80. So the trader will say, see, price is right now 80, you'll give it for 60 rupees. Otherwise, we're not taking it. They are forced to sell it for 60, which is dumped in the cold storage. 7, 8 o'clock, our Aponkar Babs come. They have to sell it for 40 rupees. Because by the time they pull their nets, it's already sunrise. So they reach a bit late. And that is how our Goan farm fishermen are always at a disadvantage. The solution, thankfully, now is that something that they were demanding is a cold storage in HGPT itself, so that the trawler themselves can store it in their own cold storage. So many years we had so many governments, but they never thought of a cold storage, a government-run cold storage for fisheries. Same thing is happening with the agriculture produce. We need good logistics to increase the price so that the fluctuations in prices is stabilized. How it will be stabilized? That is, when there's high produce, it is stored and then released when the price is right or when there's demand. So if lessons are to be learned from this fishing thing, corporatization of agriculture is a disaster. So we don't want corporatization of agriculture. We do not want contract farming. Parekar himself had rejected contract farming from the state, for this chief minister to promote that, to promote contract farming, to promote corporate farming, and on top of that to attack a particular minority community by denying them protein. It's not that the minority community will not eat beef. They will eventually move to other forms like chicken or vegetable protein. What will happen? The poor people who are dependent on cheap vegetable protein, those prices will increase, and those poor people will not be able to afford that, because the demand for vegetable protein food will increase, like your chickpeas, your all the other lentils, and all that price will go up. That also you'll have given to Adani and this thing to import from outside, the big corporates to import from outside. So this whole cycle has to be broken. We cannot allow, in fact, the cycle to be formed in the first place. And we need community involvement. We need good logistics as much as possible. We do not want corporates in our agriculture sector. It is going to be a disaster. And just like now, how people have realized Jio prices, mobile prices are gone up now. It's not free anymore like how it is launched. Why? Because they have killed off all the small mobile players. So like that, slowly once Reliance takes over, the price of food will increase and it will become unaffordable for us. And by that time, we'll have no farmers and no farmland to go back to get good, natural, unmodified, ungenetically modified crops to eat. So I hope, people understand this cycle. So this is the two issues which we wanted to bring it to our audience, because we, besides the section 144 and the disability, which are also equally, intense, equally this thing. So do we have time for any more stories, or should we push them to another date? Because I think 2 hours are done.
Yeah, we're much ahead of the 2 hours that were allotted. But before we conclude, Avinash, I would like to also add to the agricultural debate. We notice in the Western countries that there has been a constant preservation of the agricultural industry by governments, no matter what kind of regime is in power, whether it is right wing, centrist, or left wing. And that should be a learning lesson for us, because there is a sort of wisdom in keeping out private players from something that is as essential as food stuff. Because at the end of it, we no matter how egalitarian a society is, there is still a class divide, and especially rampantly in India. We are not an egalitarian society, and the class divide has been increasing over time. There is nothing being done which is actually closing the gap between the poor and the rich. So it is especially more important in our context to not have oligarchic players coming into a very sensitive industry such as the agricultural industry, and in turn playing with the livelihoods and the lives of the people who rely on food which is being grown by our farmers, and
Yeah.
that's going to kick us on our pockets very soon. And perhaps you and I may not feel the effect of it so strongly, but the lower strata, or another class of people who can't afford as much, are going to feel it much more.
Absolutely, and we are going to face, it's a we are going to face multiple brunch, not just on the food prices,
Hmm.
not just on the supply of quality food, because this will
Hmm.
be genetically modified. We don't know what is the impact of that,
Hmm.
and genetic. I also think genetic modification at times is required. Corn itself is genetically modified over thousands of years, but when it
Hmm.
is done with a sinister intention of making sure that the seeds cannot be regrown in the next harvest, it's wrong.
Hmm.
So besides the quality of seeds, third thing is they are looking at moving people out of agriculture and into urban areas for the purpose of cheap labor. If you remember, during COVID time, they did not allow the labor to go back to the villages, especially in Karnataka and all. They kept them trapped there. It is slavery, and this entire corporate machine in India, which has taken control over the government, like what was discussed earlier by Ms. Singh. This whole they need more and more
Cheap labor.
slaves to come into and live in slums, because they obviously these people cannot afford housing. There is
Hmm.
no space, there's no affordable housing in Margao and any other place in Goa and any other
Hmm.
cities. So the only option
Hmm.
is to live in slums under the patronage of a slum lord. So where they have to give hafta. It's a terrible existence that these farmers are
Absolutely.
looking at in the future, and it's already started, but it'll accelerate with this policy of contract farming, and this policy of and the policy of taking this corporates taking over people's farmlands and all that. So
Absolutely.
we need this thing to stop. We have to protect our APMCs. We have to double our farmers' income by sustainable means, by getting more people involved into agriculture so that more jobs are created. And we
Yes.
need to address individual problems that Goa faces, including tenancy in Komdat land, including
Hmm.
irrigation. There's a lot
Hmm.
of fields that have been polluted with sewage, especially
Hmm.
around cities. So all these issues need to be discussed, none of which have made it in this agriculture policy.
Hmm.